computer. Okay, recording, great. So the purpose of today's talk is to introduce you guys to non-invasive hemodynamics. This is all stuff that you guys have known before, but I want to go through in a little bit more detail and just go through some practical techniques about how to approach a hemodynamic problem. One of my old echo attendees used to say a good echocardiogram can do just as much as a right heart cath. I think a lot of our cath colleagues would disagree with that, but if you have a good quality echocardiogram, you can really do a lot. And then Greg and Isa over the next 2 weeks will also go over some cases with you and didactics if needed, but mostly cases. So I want to spend the this week and the next 2 weeks crunching numbers. So that's what I want you guys to do. I think you guys struggle with it sometimes because you don't have enough practice. So I want to talk to you about a very simplified, logical way to go through it. So here are my notes. Okay, so I want you to think about the heart in a very anatomically incorrect way, and which is a square. So some of you have seen me do this. So the square is going to be turned to 4. This is going to be, just make sure everything is correct. Okay, RA, RV, LA, LV, and then you're going to have your IVC, your SVC here, about the same. And your pulmonary artery here. So here's your pulmonary valve here, your tricuspid valve. Here's your pulmonary vein. And here is your aorta and your tricuspid valve right here. Okay. So that makes it very simple. So during the course of your hemodynamic problem solving, I kind of think of it as a Sudoku. Like you're going to fill in some numbers in order to get other numbers. You fill in what you know, and you use the numbers that you filled in to fill out the other things. Eventually, this will become more self-explanatory for you, but for difficult questions, I draw this picture every time I'm trying to figure out something. So a couple of things before we start, in terms of figuring out these problems, I usually ask myself very simple questions. They may seem very simple questions, but they're very important for you to keep in the back of your mind when you're approaching these questions. The number one question is, where are you? When are you? Are you systole or are you diastole? Which valves are open? Aortic and pulmonic valves or tricuspid and mitral valves? What's open? Where's the flow? And then number 3, where are the velocities coming from? Which direction is the velocity? Is it TR where it's going this way? Where is it this way? Is it MR where it's going this way? Is it pulmonary regurgitation where it's going this way? So you gotta have to figure that out and draw your pictures accordingly. So let's start off with the most simple example, which is using our tricuspid regurgitation jet to figure out the pulmonary arterial systolic pressure. So let's assume that our RAP is 5. And you have your tricuspid regurgitation jet seen in your PSACs or RV tilt view. And let's give it a number. Let's give it 3 meters per second. So let's go through our questions. Where are we? Are we in systole or diastole? Rahul.
Hello?
Yes, PR, where are we? Systole or diastole?
Systole.
Okay, so let's look at our diagram. What's open? Is the tricuspid valve open or closed?
Should be closed.
Yes. And our pulmonary artery is open or closed?
Open.
Open. Great. So now you have your flow going from your RV to your RA. And that flow is 3 meters per second. So that means the pressure drop from the RV to the RA is 3 meters per second, which correlates by the modified Bernoulli equation to 4(3) squared, or 36 millimeters of mercury. So, which means that your RV systolic pressure, and you're in systole here, systolic pressure is 36 plus 5, which is 41. And then the absence of pulmonic stenosis, so too should your PASP be 41 millimeters of mercury. Okay, so you guys all know this. I just drew it out on this diagram. Okay, so let's use the same example to move a little bit further and pose a situation where you have that RVSP, but that RVSP is not necessarily your PASP. And that situation is going to be when you have pulmonic stenosis. So in this point in systole, let's say you're at the parasternal short axis view across the across the aortic valve, and here's your pulmonary artery, here's your tricuspid, and here's your RA and RV. And then now here is the Doppling here, the CW here across the pulmonic valve, and you get this Doppler signal. Instead of your nice 100 centimeter per second, you are getting about 200 centimeters a second, or 2 meters per second. And suppose you still have here 41 millimeters of mercury in systole. So what you're saying now, in this moment in systole, your RV is sitting pretty at 41, and then you have this pressure drop going this way. And your pressure drop, the velocity of this flow is 2 meters per second. So we 4VR that. 4, 2 squared equals 16. So now what is our PASP? Greg.
I'm here, sorry.
Mhm.
I couldn't hit the mute button. So RVSP is 41, and the pressure gradient across there is 16. So your PSP is 41 minus 16, which is 25.
25, good. I tutored kids and I think I told some of you in med school, and uniformly they would all take out their calculators to do this kind of thing. Drove me bananas. As a former captain of the math team, that find that offensive. So very good, you're correct. Cool. So now let's do a different situation where you have a pulmonic artery here, and then it's rather than pulmonic outflow, we get the little bit of regurgitation. And let's Doppler that. Let's Doppler that regurgitation. That regurgitation should be above the baseline, right? Because it's shooting up into your, well, it's shooting up into your probe. So this is your PR jet. And let's give this a number. Let's just make it easy. 2 meters per second is the pressure, is the velocity of your PR jet at end diastole. So now you're in diastole, right? And let's just use an RAP of 5. Okay. So here we are in diastole. What is open, Jahan? What valve is open on the right side?
That side. Top.
1 second.
You got quite the
What's
echo.
flash? Okay.
What's open? Someone else want to answer, Umair?
Tricuspid.
Your tricuspid valve, right?
Bicuspid valve is open. So here we are in diastole. We're in diastole. Tricuspid is open. So RA should be the same theoretically as RV, diastolic pressure. So we got 5 here. So now you have a PR jet going from the PA backwards. This is closed, but you got a regurgitation jet that has a velocity of 2 meters per second, right? So with that velocity, you get a pressure drop of 16. What is your PA diastolic pressure? Mozam.
16.
I can't see the screen. I'm sorry.
It's 16.
16? Or is that the gradient?
Oh, it's 21.
Great.
21.
So the pressure drop across is 16. Can you guys all see my blackboard?
Yeah, we're actually all sitting together in the fellows room and watching it on the TV. So
Oh, that's good. Okay. Good. That's better. Okay. So that's PADP would be 21. That's correct. Okay. Good. Let's do another example. And I'm going to redraw this picture. Okay. So let's just redraw it. Picture is very Mondrian. So let's do MR now. MR happens in systole or diastole? Anyone?
Systole.
So we're in systole. Okay. So let's have we have an MR jet and we're Dopplering it. We're Dopplering it. It's MR jet. Well, it's going to be upside down though, right? Because we're the heart's flipped. Let's give this a nice hearty number of 5 meters per second. Okay. So let's say, okay, how do I want to do this? Okay. Let's say the LAP is 5 millimeters. Oh, let's make it 10 millimeters of mercury. Then what is your LV and systolic pressure or systolic pressure? Peak systolic pressure. Pankil.
110.
110. Great. Because your pressure drop, you're going from here to here. Your pressure drop from LV to LA is 100. So this makes it 110. Okay. Okay, let's use that same number. 110. And now we have a VSD. Primarily the flow in VSD is systole or diastole.
Systole.
Great. Okay, so we're in systole. And let's take an example. We're in the subcostal view. So here's your liver, here's your heart. Okay. And then here is your nice VSD here. And you're Dopplering this way. Oops, Dopplering this way. So that means your flow is going from here to here. And so your flow kind of looks like this. And say that velocity is 4 meters per second. And then let's see, RA is 5. What is your RV and systolic pressure? Anyone?
Yeah. 84, right?
84, okay. So we have 110 and our pressure drop across the VSD is 4 times 16, or 4, and that's,
That's 110 minus 64.
yes, good. And what is that? 36, right? Okay, great. So it's 36. Good job. Very good, Umair. Okay, is that clear for everyone? Does that make sense?
Is that 40? Wouldn't it be 46?
Is it 46? You're right, it's 46. I needed my calculator.
I was a mathlete too.
the limit does not exist. Does anyone get that joke?
Mean Girls.
Mean Girls, very good. The limit does not exist. Okay. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna go into my presentation. And where are we here? Okay. Let me share. Okay, can everyone see the my question, my presentation? Non-invasive hemodynamics. You guys okay? See it?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just take out my screen. Let's see. Meeting controls. Okay, stop video. Oh, I hate that picture. Oh, now I'm gonna start video so you can see a white screen. Have you guys had any success? I mean, Anon, I don't know if Anon, are you here? Or Mozam, did you have to get IT to change your picture? How'd you get your picture like that?
Oh, just my regular Zoom picture. Is it the one with me and Ayan?
Yeah, it is. They put my ID picture on it, which it looks okay in the small ID, but in the other one it looks horrible. It looks like I just had a child, which I just did.
Mine's my Gmail, that's why I think. And not
Okay, I gotta figure out where to. I hate that picture. Okay, so case 1. These are a mix of hemodynamic and valve questions. So hopefully we'll get to do a little bit of math together. So case 1, the 18-year-old recent immigrant with a murmur since childhood. She's asymptomatic. Physical exam is consistent with a carotid upstroke with a mild delay. She has regular rate and rhythm, 4 out of 6 systolic murmur, which is mid to late peaking, and there's a thrill in the suprasternal notch, which radiates and the murmur radiates to the carotids. What is striking about this PW and CW? Let's start with Rahul.
So CW, you see at the bottom here, you can look at the velocities. It's approaching 400, which is very high.
Good. Okay, that's all I want you to say. Okay, great. So now here are the videos. It's going to go through all the different views in this one long clip, so just pay attention. So wall motion looks okay. I want you guys to notice that there's no turbulence at the LVOT. There's no color. There's like a little bit of AI, but essentially colorless in systole. This is the 5-chamber view, or sorry, rather the 3-chamber view. Okay. What would you guys do? Anyone would take out the aortic valve? Anyone? Okay.
I
What
want
are
to see if it's bicuspid. It's hard to tell.
So someone thinks it's about bicuspid valve?
I would do D.
D? Okay. I think it's tricuspid, actually. It's a little tougher to see. Okay. Anyone would just get a TE?
Yeah, Greg said TE.
Yeah. So the key points of this one is that there's clearly an elevated gradient, as Rahul pointed out, across the aortic valve. But there is no AS, and there is not a lot of LVOT turbulence, as I pointed out. So there's something weird going on that we're not seeing. There's some obstructing thing that we're not seeing. So let's go to the TEE. I don't expect all of you to get this, or if any of you get that, I'll be pretty impressed. This is not an easy one. But you can just look through it and then describe to me what you see that's weird. You see turbulence now, though, but where is it? Where is the turbulence? Okay. So what do you guys think? This is a two-step question. Well, I guess let's just start here. Where do you guys think the turbulence is? Is it above the valve, at the valve, or below the valve? Above the valve, right? I mean, that's really your only choice because you already looked below the valve. You already looked out the valve. It's got to be above the valve. So the correct answer. Oh, let's just go through what these mean. What's XO?
Turner syndrome.
Good. What's elastin gene mutation?
It's Marfan's.
Good. How about notch 1?
I don't know.
Yeah, certain bicuspids are associated with notch 1. And TGFB? What was TGFB? I thought that was Marfan's. Gosh, I don't remember. Load Stees is TGFB. So yes, yes. What they wanted to know, elastin is actually, no, it's Marfan is fibrillin. Sorry, I'm sorry about that. I misspoke. Marfan is fibrillin. So this one is elastin. You don't have to know this now, but definitely know it for the boards. So elastin abnormality is associated with Williams syndrome. It's also associated with supravalvular aortic stenosis. So what you're seeing with the valve is that it looks like the valve is actually fused to the junctional ridge, which is a recognized variant of supravalvular aortic stenosis. This is not an easy one. So it's more because it didn't tie into what we talked about last week with the aortopathies. That's not an easy one. So the teaching point is that there's high gradients. Look everywhere. If it's not below, it's got to be above. So this is a tough one. People with supravalvular stenosis, what do you have to be checked seriously for? Progressive AI, hypocalcemia, intracranial aneurysm. Does anyone know?
Is it like ischemic because that's where the coronaries come off above the valve?
Yeah, that's a good reason, yes. But their reason was that when you have people with Williams syndrome and elastin abnormalities, you should be checking for elastin. Yes, and that was my initial thought too, that it is where the valves come, where the blood vessels come off, but elastin actually affects the coronary artery architecture. So you guys don't remember from hypocalcemia is associated with hypoparathyroidism or hyper, and that's in the 22q11 deletion or DiGeorgia. So that's where hypocalcemia. It's from your first years may remember this painfully from their boards. So Williams syndrome may also have cerebral vascular disease. That's not with progressive arterial stenosis and not aneurysm formation. Okay, so good. Okay, so this is my own drawing. What is the pulmonary arterial systolic pressure? Anyone can shout out the answer. We should do it Family Feud style, and somebody gets to steal. Does anyone have an answer? I'm gonna use my blackboard.
So your RVSP is
59. 59.
59, good, okay. 53, close, okay. So you have CW going through the TR at RV tilt, 4 meters per second. So you add 64. Oh, so I see what you did. So you add 64 to 5, which is your RAP, and then you subtract from there 16, and that will give you. Did I do it wrong? 53.
yeah,
I did this
your
very
RVSP
late at night. Does this make sense?
Because your RVSP is 69, and then you subtract the CW through the RVSP
Yes.
with Pulmonic.
Yes. So the key point, as I mentioned earlier, when there's pulmonic stenosis, subtract the transpulmonic gradient from your calculated RVSP to get the PASP. So remember, I remember the stupid mnemonic, like PS is protective for the treatment. In certain congenital conditions, I believe, I remember if not coarctation, if TGA was one where you just have a ton of flow to inappropriate flow going from the LV, the morphological LV to the pulmonary artery, through the pulmonary artery to the lungs, and you end up getting a lot of drowning your lungs in pressure and fluid. So one of the old time surgeries was to create a pulmonic stenosis, which protects the pulmonary arteriature from the volume and pressure overload. So just that's how I remember. PS is protective. Your PASP is always going to be lower than your RVSP in the setting of pulmonic stenosis. Okay. And so what was your RVSP again? Do you guys remember from the last case?
69.
69. Okay. So pretend this person had a VSD. What is your LVSP? Yes, great. 69 plus 77. That would give it to 146, I believe, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, 46. Okay.
Yeah, 140.
Okay, great. So yes, you don't need RAP, you don't need LAP. Just all you need is the RVSP. You know that the pressure gradient across going from the LV to the RV is 77 here, so you just add that to the RVP. Okay, 146, great. Okay, so here's a little bit trickier one. This is the peak velocity in the CW jet. Below is 4 meters per second. And the blood pressure, your systemic blood pressure is 90/60. So what is your LV systolic pressure? Just think about that for a minute. I'm going to draw my diagram so I can show you. How would we approach this problem?
So this is CW effect across the aortic valve.
Okay, great. CW across the aortic valve. So what's
So
our
we'll get-
pressure drop across the aortic valve?
64.
64, good. And then,
So you add 64 to 90.
yes. So 64 plus 90 is 154, and that's our LVESP. Which is always amazing to me because if you have somebody with aortic stenosis, like severe aortic stenosis, and their pressure is high, just think about how pressurized that LV must be. I mean, it's going to be in the 190s, 200s easily if somebody's hypertensive. It's pretty scary, think about it. All right, great. Okay. So this patient, guess what? Also has a VSD. So let's do our numbers. What is the RVSP here? 154.
Is this the same person?
Same person, yes. So they're 154.
It's 154, the LVSP, minus
Mhm.
the VSD jet, which is 103.
Yes. So 154 minus the pressure drop across the VSD, which is 103, and equals 51, right? 51. It tricks you. I tricked you because, well, tempted to, because you don't need the RAP here. It's irrelevant. Okay. All right. Okay. So here's another question. 85-year-old woman, she's short of breath. She has a BSA, she's a little lady, 1.6. Her echo showed an EF of 60%. The aortic valve looked tight. She has a mean gradient of 30, an AVA of 1, LVOT of 1.9, and LVOT VTI of 224. Her stress test shows that she has a 94% RCA. Sorry, stress test shows inferior wall ischemia. Subsequent cath showed 90% RCA. Trans aortic gradient during cath was 22. So which one of these most likely explains the discrepancy in transvalvular gradients?
Pressure recovery.
Good, yeah. You guys are probably gonna hear this to death because it's a pretty important.
You're actually gonna hear it tomorrow. I'm gonna talk about.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So pressure recovery phenomenon. So very simply put, you have a stenotic valve, and just after the stenotic valve, your pressure drops just a tiny bit. So if you were to measure your pressure gradient from your LV, your very pressurized LV, to this area right over the valve, which is what you do in echo, then you're gonna get a much bigger gradient than if you were to, i.e. in cath, measure the difference between your LV pressure in your LV versus a little bit further up in your aorta. So the cath gradient is always going to be a little less than the echo gradient because of the pressure recovery phenomenon. Okay. So, okay, moving on. A 40-year-old woman, she has mitral regurgitation. She has a Pisa radius of 0.9 and an aliasing velocity of 40 centimeters per second. CW of the MR jet is 4.9 meters per second and VTI is 180. It's a two-step question. What is most likely going to be noted? So the easiest way to do this is to, let's calculate your ERO and calculate your regurgitant volume rather. Okay, so I'll give you guys a minute to do that.
ER 0.4.
What'd you guys get?
I don't know what these guys got, but I got it. I got an ERO of 0.1, 0.42.
0.42. And that would be correct. Yes, it's 0.42. Okay. So what would that make your regurgitant volume? Anyone? What happened to everyone?
75.
75, right. So your ERO is 2 pi r squared, and that r is going to be 0.9 centimeters. Again, emphasis on making everything centimeters. Multiplied by the elastin velocity, which is 40 centimeters per second. That whole thing divided by, ooh, tricky, 4.9, so 490 centimeters per second. That would give you 0.42 cm squared. And then your regurgitant volume is 0.42 multiplied cm squared. I'm very stickler for units. Multiplied by 180 centimeters, and that equals 75 cm squared cubed. So is this correct? A? Nope.
No.
Vena contracted 0.4.
Be bigger than that.
No, it should be bigger. That's mild to moderate, right? LE index of 32.
No, it should be higher.
That's pretty small. Yes, it should be higher. Systolic pulmonary vein flow reversal.
Yeah.
Yes. What's the regurgitant fraction in this case?
So with the stroke volume.
Can you get the regurgitant fraction?
We need to know what the stroke volume is.
No, you're missing the stroke volume, correct. So that's irrelevant because you can't. And also this regurgitant fraction is consistent with moderate. Regurgitant fraction over 50% is considered severe. So that's not applicable, nor can we measure it in this case. Okay, so that's the answer. Okay, so a couple pointers about how, but key points about using pressure half time to calculate AVA. Echo was done for a 60-year-old person with a murmur. The pressure half time is 150 milliseconds. So in which of the situations is pressure half time most appropriate for calculating mitral valve severity? And I'll give you a clue. You can use pressure half time for calculating mitral valve severity, stenosis severity, if you have a normal LV, normal loading condition. In which case would you expect to have a normal LV for the most part? Severe MR? No. Well, let's go the other case. So severe AI? No, right? Bioprosthetic mitral valve? I mean, that's something you guys should just remember automatically. You can pressure. This gets confusing because you're told all the time when you have a prosthetic valve to always use pressure half time. I mean, you should always use pressure half time, but you're going to use pressure half time to assess as a marker of whether or not your valve is working, but not to assess your you get an MVA or use the mean gradient to as a marker. Well, not to use your pressure half time to calculate mitral valve area. And so, but the peak velocity across the mitral valve is extremely important in pressure half time. That's a little bit longer. It's consistent with valve dysfunction. You can't really use it to calculate severity. So the answer actually is rheumatic mitral stenosis. So in this mitral valve area, in the case of mitral valve stenosis, this equation is widely used for the quantification of mitral stenosis and rheumatic heart disease. And this equation assumes normal LV diastolic function. Okay, moving on. Okay, 57-year-old with this echo. She has a bicuspid valve with a large color flow jet of AI. Pisa radius is 0.9 at a Nyquist of 30, and the peak velocity of the aortic regurgitation jet is 4. So this should be pretty easy for you guys. You can do it in a GIF. Anyone?
24.
What'd you get? All right, let's see if you're correct. Okay, so ERO is 0.4 centimeters squared. So I think someone said that. That's good. Great. Okay, so VSD. What kind of VSD is this? This is a TEE with a gastric view.
Ramirez says perimembranous.
I'm sorry, what did you say? What kind of VSD is this?
Ramirez says perimembranous.
Okay, anyone else? It's pretty low down.
Muscular.
Yeah, it's muscular. So perimembranous, you would expect that to, perimembranous is supercristal. You would expect to be pretty close to the aortic outlet. Perimembranous would be in the membranous VSD, so it's much higher up. And then supercristal is defect of the part of the ventricular septum that separates the aortic from the pulmonic. So they are both very high up, but just at different places. You can differentiate them the most easiest at the peristernal short axis view, with perimembranous at the 9-10 o'clock position and the supercristal at the 1-2 o'clock position. In the peristernal long axis view, it's harder to differentiate, although theoretically you're probably more likely to see perimembranous rather than supercristal. Muscular is much lower down. An outlet VSD is more commonly seen in cases of the Down syndrome where there is actually a cushion defect. That's exceedingly rare in adult population. In this case is a muscular VSD. And I think that this particular question, it was iatrogenic. Yeah, it was a result of an MI. So iatrogenic, if you want to blame McDonald's for the MI, I guess. Okay, so assuming no valvular disease and the blood pressure is 110/50 and the RAP is 10, what is the PASP? So this is a case where you really have to fill in what you know. Any takers?
So you're assuming if your systolic blood pressure is 110, your LV systolic blood pressure is also 110.
Right.
Disease, and then you get a gradient across the VSD of 3.6 squared times 4, which is I lost it here. I think it's like 50 something.
Okay.
I just put something like that, and then you just subtract your LVSP minus the gradient across the VSD, and you get your RVSP of 59.
Yeah, I think it was 58. So very good. Yes. So a 4 VR squared with the 3.6 will come to about 52 pressure drop across the VSD. So 52. And then, so 110 minus 52 is 58. So you don't need the RAP here. Okay. Okay, we'll do this one really quickly. Just changing gears, what is the cardiac output? Just making sure you guys know how to calculate that.
3.8.
3.8. How did you calculate that?
You're getting stroke volume using your LVOT area times your LVOT VTI, and that's 37.6 times your heart rate.
Great. Okay. So your stroke volume would be correct. Your LVOT, don't use diameter, remember. You're going to use, Greg knew better than that. You're going to use your LVOT area. You can guarantee on your boards there's going to be an answer where somebody forgot to make the diameter into a radius and use pi, and just use 2. So your stroke volume is very simply, in this case, just pi times 12. So that comes up to be about 36 or so. And then you multiply that by your heart rate. So this is an example of giving you too much information and having to filter through all those numbers. So 3.8, very good. I think the next one is the last one. Okay, the last one I saved is the hardest. So let's just talk about very quickly, how do you calculate QPQS? What numbers would you use here? Well, I'm just gonna, while you guys think about that, let me just answer this phone call. Hello? Okay, so how do we calculate QP?
The flow across the RVOT.
Okay. And then how do we and how do we, so how do you calculate the flow across the RVOT?
So you can do the stroke volume. Right? So the RVOT VTI times the RVOT area.
Very good. Okay. And how about the QS?
Same thing, just LVOT.
Great. In this case, I did the same thing and I got B, which is 1.5. But this book, and there's a reason this book only got like 2 stars on Amazon, because the questions are out there, man. So they didn't want you to use the RVOT, which is the way I've always learned. In this case, they argue that since you have the main PA, that you should use that because it's more easily measured and it's more round, versus the RVOT is very rarely round. It's more ellipse. It's less accurate. So if you were to use, I don't think you're going to get this kind of nebulous stuff on the boards. The answer is, if you use the RVOT, which I did, you're going to get 1.5. And if you were to use the main PA and the flow across the main PA, which is 25 times times 26, 25, using 25 as your diameter multiplied by your VTI of 26, then you're going to get 1.7. So the answer is A for that reason. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so I sent you guys the link. Go over the questions. I hope that was helpful. Good job,
Awesome.
Greg.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,